Hello and welcome to Dungeoneered, a podcast dedicated to discussing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Josh.
Let's do this. So Josh, for Lukewarm Open today, I wanted to do something a little bit different than what we've been doing. So over the last few months, we've been doing just like creating fun little things, kind of what our thought process is in creating things. But today I wanted to take it a little bit more to real life instead of the D&D life.
Okay.
I'm not sure how long this Lukewarm Open is going to be, but I thought it would be interesting to discuss expectations that you have for D&D players / DMs when you're playing D&D. Because I know a lot of groups have problems with, what they're supposed to do when they show up at a table. Are there expectations? What's off limits? What's not off limits? And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what are your expectations when you're DMing and then also when you're a player.
Well, I will say that I think everyone, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter if you think you do or don't, I think everyone has expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody does, for sure.
And I think the problem is when people don't say them. So that's why I like to have in my session zeros, or just like whenever I'm doing it with a new group, establishing, like I had all my players write a kind of like a few sentences to a paragraph of just like what they wanted to explore with their character and with the world.
Do you usually take into heavy consideration what your players, like what type of scenario your players want to play in?
Yes. I didn't start that way, but I do now. And so what I do is I have them write down the kind of what they want to experience and what kind of, like, this was before we even picked like what type of world we were going to be in. I had them all write down. I had them write down 3 things that they were like, this is the type of world I would like to see. And then I looked at all the ones that I got from everybody and put like the top 3 choices together. Like the top 3 kind of, I made it into a similar wording of 3 ideas and sent that to the party and said, hey, if this is what this next campaign focuses on, are you cool with this? Would everybody be happy with this?
Did you get a pretty good response from that type of way of doing it?
Yeah, and I also think that it's important to establish with people like session 0 more than just like what the campaign overall is going to be about, but like what type of stories people are okay and not okay with talking about.
Right, because I know, I don't know, as a player, oftentimes like I can play in a campaign and my idea of what I want the campaign to be can be often very different from what the DM wants the campaign to be or what the other players want the campaign to be. And oftentimes those can clash or they can be, like a totally different.
Well, so that's why one of the things I want to make sure early on when I'm creating just anything is I don't want it to ever be, I'm going to take your character where you don't want it to be. Like, I never want to do that. So I want to be as aware of what they're hoping for, like out of their characters, when I am creating like where I see their character going.
What do you think the biggest problem is at like a standard D&D table when it comes to expectations? Do you think there is? Like, I know a lot of tables struggle with.
I think it's just the mixed expectations and people not realizing some of the expectations. So that when somebody is like super excited for this certain thing and then that never gets touched on, that could be sad.
Yeah. I know another really big problem that happens is like people watch like really highly produced D&D shows and then they like expect their game to be
exactly
like those
that
D&D shows.
Yeah.
Which, that kind of stuff can be achieved, but it's also really important to know that a lot of these people, like do this for a living, and a lot of these people do. But
I mean, also, I think the most important thing is that that's not always what everybody wants. Like for a lot of people who got into D&D because of Critical Role, they expect that's what all D&D games are like. But then there's people like Matt Colville who plays, and you're like, that's completely different style of game. And it's not saying Matt Colville's way of playing and Matthew Mercer's way of playing are, one of them is wrong. No, they're both the game is made to have fun in both of these ways. You're the main thing to think about is what ways are fun for your group, and how do you achieve fun in your group.
Well, and I think for me, as both a DM and a player, the most important thing is obviously to have fun, because that's obviously what we're here to do with D&D. Is we're here to have fun and play an awesome game. But I think it's also one of the bigger problems I think DMs run across is that sometimes it can feel like the DM, is here just to facilitate the player's needs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they can often be kind of forgotten about as a player of the game.
Oh no, yeah, they are 100% a player, and they need to be having fun as much as the players need to be having fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then I also hear a lot of like talk on, especially on social media, like Twitter, of like D&D is not a versus game between the DM and player. And while I agree with that to a certain extent, I agree with that. To a certain extent, I also think it's really fun to like have those moments where like the DM isn't trying to kill you like purposely, but like the players that he's playing are trying to kill you. You know what I'm saying? Or like they're
I don't think that's ever what that statement is not saying. That what you just said is not what because the whole point is the DM while having to act to try and kill you. That is never the hope of the DM. The DM is hoping for you to succeed, but the DM is also going to play the villain as the villain would act.
Right.
So he will still try to kill you, but it's not him doing this to be mean. This is what the big bad or whatever enemy you're facing is trying to do, and I want you to stop him. I'm on your side to stop him.
Yeah, I think I fall into like I 100% agree. Like I want my players to succeed. I want them to be able to kill the big bad evil guy or defeat the big bad evil guy. Yeah. But at the same time, as a DM, I really enjoy the aspect of I create a combat, and this is what I have within the combat. And I'm going to use whatever tools I have at my disposal that are fair. Key word there, that are fair, because I could easily just, BDM and beat you.
Yeah.
To like have a strategy game that I can revolve my characters and things around. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not me not trying to beat you, because there are times where I'm trying to beat you. I mean, not that I'm as a player in the game. Does that make sense? Like I'm not building the combats to purposely beat you, but when I'm in those combats and I have like a villain,
that's what I was saying as well.
I'm trying to right,
yeah, because that's what the villain's intent is. So you're just playing the villain as they would play themselves, as they would act.
Right, exactly. Well, because I think too, though, because with this subject and expectations, I think a lot of people start thinking like, oh, like. And again, this all boils down to expectations. So like if a group doesn't want challenging combats, or and they want to just like be super huge heroes and go and save the day every time they have a combat, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Then obviously if everybody's having fun doing that, it's an amazing thing, right?
Yeah.
And then also along those lines, if people like to have challenging combats, or people like to have combats that are incredibly meaningful, then that's also a really fun thing. And so I think all of these things are important to talk about when we talk about expectations at the table.
Very much so.
And then obviously, too, just to,
I also think
open.
I don't think there's ever going to be a table that's all one way or all the other. I think that every table is a balancing act, and I think it literally just takes time to learn what people are looking for, because not everybody can voice what they want. Like they can't be like, not everybody can say, oh, I want like 25% role play, like 10%. Like they don't know that. They don't know it on that level.
In an average session of 4 hours, I need 2.5 of role play, 1.5 of combat, 1 hour and 7 minutes of
yeah, exactly. Like it's a subconscious thing for a lot of people. They know when they're having fun, and they know when they're not. They don't know the exact percentage they need of each for it to be fun and still interesting. I have gotten really good at that with my party, because we're literally on we're on our third campaign, like nearing the end of it, coming on to our fourth. Like, I have been doing it playing with these guys for a very long time at this point, years and years and years. Like, I have figured it out by failing so many times, and I feel so bad for, like, if I think about my early DMing, like, I was not very good at it, and I just like you just get better with time, and especially you get able to read your party when they're having fun and when they're not. And like, we've had people come and join and people leave and other people join, and so like kind of figuring out what each person is looking for, like, I'm getting better at it, and I've kind of figuring out the best way to balance that is I think it doesn't matter how good you are as a DM, you're never going to be perfect at it.
No. Right. Absolutely. I mean, and at least perfect to, other people's expectations as well. So
yeah, like there will always be a time where like if we're going Critical Role, for instance, like where Travis is thinking that, oh, this shopping is going on a little longer than I hoped it would.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
And so there's always going to be something that feels like it's just slightly, but it's finding that, making sure that by the end of each session, everybody had fun.
Yeah. Or even just like, I mean, the thing I struggle with a lot is like using the same phrases or words over and over again. I'm like, why did I do that? I do that all the time. Like,
see, that's the thing. I don't think,
I
think you as a DM, as I do as well, notice that more than the players do.
Yeah, probably. Absolutely. I think that's definitely the case. But, like even when I'm watching like Critical Role, I notice like Matt, when there's like a shopkeeper or something, he always goes in the back and they fumble something and break and they're like, oh, shit, like he does that all the time, like there's just those little things that we do and repeat with as DMs that.
Now, I will say, Aaron, is this brought up based on what happened yesterday?
No, it's not.
In our game?
Actually.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
Because I was going to say, because
so,
I wanted to say if it was that. Now, I'm not going to spoil too much for the people listening, but there was a kind of a major moment, and I don't think it was. I don't think me or the player who it happened to took it negatively. I don't think it's a drastic world-ending thing. I think this is now going to be a fun, interesting growth moment. And I think I just wanted to make sure you were clear on that.
Yeah. No, I didn't. Making Lukewarm Open, I didn't even think about that. But it does fit really well with what we were doing.
Yeah, because me and that player drive to and from D&D together. And so we were just talking and enjoying and talking about how the growth will happen in that moment and into the future.
No, I'm actually really excited about it. And I think it turned out really good, especially for what I have planned for it. But yeah, no, it didn't stem from that, but it like fits really well, which is interesting. But no, the reason I brought it up was because it actually has to kind of relate to Critical Role. I was talking with Jordan and Chris yesterday. We went on a walk after D&D, and we were talking about, in my opinion, like if I was Critical Role is doing a new series with Brendan Lee Mulligan as the DM, right? And I was talking.
Is that the Madness one?
No, the Calamity one. I don't know what exactly it entails, but he's doing a Calamity show.
Is that the one that's next Thursday?
I don't remember. Maybe I don't remember. I don't remember when it starts, but anyways, he's DMing one with a bunch of players, and I was talking about how nerve-wracking it must be, at least in my opinion, as a DM, to go like DM in Matt's world while Matt is like there. Like
I mean, I think that would be a weirdness. It doesn't matter if it's Matthew Mercer or if it's you. If I tried to DM in someone else's world that I didn't have a like strong understanding of, I would be worried I would screw it up all the time.
Exactly.
Nerve-wracking.
That's kind of as someone who's created a world that's like really in depth, and I've worked, years and years and years and years on it, since high school even. To like, if I was in the opposite shoes of like having to go play in this world, and like, I would be constantly afraid that I was gonna mess it up, no matter how well I knew it. Like especially if like lore creation was partially in my hands during this as well.
Yeah.
It would definitely be super nerve wracking for me, and that's kind of where this came up from because it would be like, I wonder what their conversations are like about their expectations. Like, I mean, obviously Matt and Brendan Lee Mulligan are not like mean individuals, right? So they're not sitting there like like
Yeah, you can't touch
I hate
this.
what you did here. Yeah, exactly. But I was just curious, kind of what their expectation.
Yeah, that is certainly interesting to think about what that conversation would need to be like. How do you tell them what they can and can't edit and
right.
get all the info of what you've already created over to them? Because like just creating that stuff, there's so much stuff you don't tell the party.
Oh,
that
man.
like
yeah,
having all that info and getting it across to someone in a short amount of time to make their own thing in the world is, whew.
Yeah, it's crazy. But anyways, that's what kind of stemmed it. So, but we are getting a little long now, so we want to move on to the actual topic for this week.
And we're going to talk about the father of dinosaurs.
What?
What? I don't know what your what's about. We're just going to talk about
thing.
Yeah, Ubtao, the father of dinosaurs.
Ubtao, that is such a good name.
This time we'll be looking at a god that we dodged around a bit, but I don't think we ever like directly talked about them. Like we had an episode set in the continent that they're the god of, and so we mentioned them a little bit there, but we didn't dive into them as much as I think they deserve.
Ubtao. That sounds like some sort of like from Chult or something.
Exactly. That's exactly who it is.
Yes. I'm smart. I made it.
He is a quasi-god primordial named Ubtao, who betrayed his fellow primordials and pretty much became an honorary god.
All right, for those who may have forgotten or not remember, some listeners that we may have, explain to me what a quasi-god primordial means. Or explain to those who don't know, I should say.
I was going to partially go into this. In the beginning was toril, a world with a bunch of different races, a bunch of different stuff on it. There was 2 deity level groups, one primordials, one gods. They were constantly fighting. I believe they called it the Dawn War, where it was primordials fighting gods. Stuff happened that I'm going to go into later in this episode. And eventually, toril was ripped apart, creating now the planet of Aber and the planet of Toril. Toril is where most of the Forgotten Realms takes place on, where all of the D&D books for 5th edition are set, or the majority of them, the ones that are not in Hell and whatnot. They are set on Toril, which is specifically there in Faerun, a place in Toril, kind of a medieval Europe-like place in Toril.
Got it, okay.
On Toril, that's where they moved the gods to. On Aber is where they left the primordials. Now, stuff has happened over time, and certain things have crossed over from one to the other, like the Dragonborns, who were originally only on Aber. Stuff happened, brought one of their large cities over to Toril, and now we have Dragonborn all over. But the worlds are very different from each other. And so he is technically a primordial, but he made a deal with the gods, and now is on Toril with the gods.
Interesting. Okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So Ubtao is the god of Chult, creation, dinosaurs, and jungles. Now, as I said, it was kind of confusing because not everybody thinks of him as a god, because technically, as I said, he isn't one. He previously is a primordial, which should not be on Toril.
Okay, wait. Quick question, though, before we go to, and I don't remember if we answered this previously, but are primordials as strong as gods?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, they had a long war, so they had to be able to hold their own somehow.
Yeah, they have to at least be able to fight off gods if they had a war. That's for sure.
So, Ubtao made himself an ally of the Faerunian deities by betraying the other primordials, making himself become known as Ubtao the Deceiver. This took place during the time called the Blue Age, when the world was nothing but a giant ocean, where toril was nothing but a giant ocean, and the world was under turmoil from the war between the gods and primordials. Ubtao became the deceiver when he betrayed his fellow primordials for a guaranteed land under the gods' rule. Ubtao also did this to try and stop the fighting and rebuild the world, for the war had almost made all life extinct. It's kind of like that biblical story of the two women fighting over the baby, where a solution is offered to cut the child in half, but one of the women says, no, don't do that, because that would literally destroy everything that they were fighting over. So Ubtao is the one who's like, no. And he saw in this case that the world and its inhabitants were nearly completely demolished because of this war, and realized, what's the point of winning if everything you were fighting over is gone? Like,
so
yes,
the god of dinosaurs is a good dude.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay,
you can never trust in these lores that this person is wholly good or wholly evil. So I always try to play it off as, yeah, sure. From what I know, I think he is, but there could also be horrible stories of him for all I know.
Yeah, true.
So what happened to the world was that Dendar, the night serpent, devoured the sun and sent toril into pretty much an ice age.
Wow. Okay.
It had massive heat loss, and every plant started to die since it was no longer getting any sunlight.
I mean, I hate it when, giant gods just eat our sun.
It just sucks, man.
God. Hate it. Hate it. Makes waking up so difficult.
Now, we just saw one of your sea serpent dragons yesterday in our game.
Yes.
And
very, very
because of because of the width of it, Jordan and Chris did calculations to see how long it would be, and they say it'll be about 200 feet.
Yep.
Dendar, the night serpent, the primordial who ate the sun, is 300 feet long.
Yep.
So if your thing is 200 feet long, he could be a sun eater too.
He's getting close. He's getting close.
Now, most life on the planet at this time went extinct, as an ice age will tend to do that.
Usually, except for Sid the Sloth, you can't kill.
You can't kill him, no, or that little squirrel. Seeing this dire situation, Ubtao aided the gods in killing and imprisoning his fellow primordials, and the gods created a new sun. What was that?
Well, I was gonna say, it would be fun to make like at least an area in a D&D setting that's like Ice Age. That's like Neanderthals and stuff like that. That could be very interesting. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, some area that's like weirdly set back in time, like it's like kind of became a time capsule of an older age. That'd be interesting.
It could be super interesting. Anyways, continue.
It would be under the water. We should write that down for our next world.
Okay. Actually, that'd be super cool. Like it's underwater in a big bubble or something.
Yeah, and that's why it's preserved.
So cool. Oh man. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So the gods created a new sun, bringing the world out of its dark era and giving light to the days of thunder, where everything began to melt, and it revealed a supercontinent like Pangea called Meroboros.
Oh boy, that's a mouthful.
I was so worried that I would screw that up, and I think I got it. Meroboros. Where life once again began, eventually becoming the races and such that we know. But Ubtao's story was not over, for he still needed to receive his reward and complete his second task. Ubtao was tasked with guarding the Peaks of Flame, a volcanic mountain range that resided in the center of Chult.
Peaks of Flame is a pretty cool name for
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet name.
Now, Ubtao was tasked with protecting and guarding this because it was said that to bring about the end of the world, Dendar the Night Serpent would once again rise from the peaks of flame and bring about the end of the world.
Oh, no.
So Ubtao was set as the guard to make sure that doesn't happen. And so this is what Ubtao was set to protect and prevent. And in doing so, he was given Chult to rule, and an agreement was made that none of the other gods would try to spread their religions upon Chult, and ultimately they would leave it alone. Over time, Ubtao's essence began to split as he made himself into many nature spirits, which resided all over the jungle of Chult. Everything was going fine in Chult on a large scale. There was some crazy stuff going on that we talked about in our Chult episode. And there was some weirdnesses with the nature spirits. Like, there was one of them that he made that literally, like, kept trying to kill him.
What?
So one of the nature spirits that was made from his spirit was trying to constantly kill him, but because it was like 1/8 or 1/16 the power of this larger deity, it was never going to succeed, but it was still like trying. Like, there's some weird stuff going on.
Wait, let me get this straight. He made a bunch of spirits out of his own spirit, right?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
And they guarded and watched over the land or whatever?
They do a lot of things. But yeah, pretty much. They all have. It's like if he wanted to have something control different domains. Like, so they're not technically gods. They're just nature spirits that are a part of his soul.
Can you find them on Chult still? Are they still like a thing you can find
Yes.
in the campaign setting?
So I don't know 100% because I didn't look this up, but I know in the Tomb of Annihilation on Chult, like the book that was set there, they have like a major part of it is these kind of trickster gods, and I think they are these like spirits created off of his essence.
Interesting.
So one of them, the one I was talking about, was called Eshodo. And Eshodo is a dark demigod of shadow, destruction, cowardice, and fear.
Okay. Why would you create something like that?
He was born out of a fragment of the consciousness and being of Ubtao. And
I wonder what his thought process was when creating him.
Yeah, I don't know what his purpose was. He just wanted to kill his creator. That was his main goal, was the destruction of the creator of Chult and the Tabaxi.
And the Tabaxi.
And because there's a lot of them on there. It has relation to his history, but I wasn't going to go into that.
Okay.
Xiaodao, however, was also weak in comparison to the deity he sprung from, and thus all his attacks were furtive and cowardly.
Awkward.
Yeah. But so while all that was going on, there was kind of a life was good in Chult. Life wasn't too bad. But problems arose when one of the nature spirits, which specifically Eshodo, was killed and consumed by the evil deity Shar. When this happened, this was her breaking the agreement that the gods had made with Ubtao to protect the peaks of flame and saying that they were never going to go on his lands. And all the gods feared what Ubtao would do. Sometime in the next 30 years, Ubtao ended up abandoning Chult. Supposedly, this was because he had grown angry with the infighting of his worshippers and their over-reliance upon him, and he also had no reason to stay in Chult because he was no longer held by the agreement to be there. His worshippers also had an over-reliance upon him. His followers in Chult lost connection to him, but surprisingly, instead of creating incredible more turmoil with this, it actually had a positive effect on Chult, as the warring tribes united under this and set aside their differences. In this, many of the Chultans found their way to other gods and fully ended the agreement with Ubtao. Now, the current situation of Ubtao in 5th edition is unknown. Like, in the Tomb of Annihilation book, he's nowhere to be found. Like, the history of him and the fact that he was the lord of this place is clear throughout the whole island. Where he is, though, and if he still exists, is no one knows.
Is there like speculation? What happened?
Yes, there's lots of speculation, but I don't. There, it's not ever like incredibly vividly like said. It's like one of those things that I would have to look at a whole bunch of research and be like, okay, well, the signs point here that maybe he's here, and I don't know if that would make sense to you. Like, there's a city in Chult that was long abandoned that there's like ideas that maybe he is helping the people that live there currently, or he's rebuilding it, or like there's a lot of stuff going on and ideas about where he could be.
He's probably just shattered himself into a million different spirits, and now they all live around the jungle, and he still secretly resides over it.
I mean, that's the thing. Those are still there. So pieces of his soul are still on Chult for sure. Yeah, that is what I have of Ubtao.
I wonder if he has like does he have direct control over those spirits, or they do their own thing? Obviously, I think trying to kill him.
The fact that one of them is trying to kill him, I don't think he has great control over them.
Well, unless he's doing it on purpose or something.
But yeah, he left. He abandoned Chult. And so that is what I have for the god this week. And I was thinking we create a god, and maybe we create a god that has a goal, like this one did, to protect and watch for this like inevitable end that was supposed to come to the world, and he was like supposed to watch and prevent it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot. So what have we not made gods for? What societies?
Halflings.
So we haven't done the nomads, right?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done the drow, gnomes, and dwarves in the forest, right?
Yeah, we haven't done those.
We haven't done the plains yet, correct?
Yeah.
And I think that's it, right? We did this. Have we done the jungle? Yeah, we did.
We did.
We did the jungle. We did the jungle. We did the swamps. We did, the desert. So I think my thought is immediately where I wanted to go to was going to be a god of like travel and nomadic life for the nomads.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking like, so since again, every time we do these episodes, we have to express that because our gods are kind of created differently in this world, right? They're created by the people from their like belief and belief in that deity or that entity. How do you think a nomadic, like a god of nomad or travel, maybe even like safe travel, would arise?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I was thinking like safety and stuff. Like I like the idea of.
Yeah, I definitely see it probably more as like a god of safe travel, and then I think there would probably then be the opposite of a god of like, like barbarians and bandits and like like dangers or whatever of the roads.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you think something like that would form?
Okay. I'm gonna go biblical on this one.
Oh boy.
I'm not saying we have to do this, but I'm saying this is the idea of this is where I would create a god from. Something happens, like in the biblical instance is the people wandering the desert and they get bit by poisonous snakes, and so they make that rod of snakes of the golden snakes to look upon, and so maybe something like that happens where they have to do this thing, whether it's like gather these certain herbs or whatever to cure themselves after this terrible event that happened, and they begin to worship that thing as it saved us. It is the god of safety. It is.
Okay. I like this. What if we tried to tie it into previous weeks?
Yeah.
So what if like the nomadic group, like originated from one of these different civilizations, and they experienced some sort of catastrophe upon leaving their civilization, and were saved by something that then caused them to create this deity of travel and safety.
Okay. So I think we had them on the plains. I think that's where we had the halflings already.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I would do is I would say maybe they were like heavily into farming and such. And so maybe something happened and it made the land infertile. So they needed to move. But once they moved, great destruction came to where they were. And so they're like, oh crap. Like the thing that got us out of there was getting us out of there because it was dangerous. So like whether it's like they're constantly is shade suddenly where they were farming, or the weather turned, or the ground became just lacking nutrients. Like I don't know what it was, but whatever it was forced them to have to leave.
Okay. Let's do this then. I'm kind of liking where you're going. So we have the halflings. They're our nomadic group that lived in the plains. They still kind of, I'm assuming, reside in this plains-like area. Obviously, we have other events that happen that make races kind of scatter around, and now it's more nations than races.
Yeah.
But for the beginning portion, we have them residing in this little plains area. What if they... so I think a few gods would be created from this right off the bat. First, I think the halflings existed for a really long time. I think it would be interesting if they existed a really long time without creating a deity. So they resided in their plains for a long time without creating a deity during this creation era. And as they lived peacefully, they lived prosperously, and they flourished in the plains. Now, during this time, they didn't attribute any of it to a deity or a god. They attribute it to halfling luck and halfling ingenuity, which is how they get their luck stat. Okay, so it kind of created them to be.
They just kind of
race.
Believed in their luck.
Yes,
that's how it was made.
okay.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, and so it kind of created them as a lucky race. However, they started to...
Oh man, I love all of the racial benefits that are like a little bit silly, like they don't quite make sense. All of them were just because people believed it so much that it became truth. Like I'm thinking now, like the half orc ability, it's like people just think the half orcs, it takes so much to take them down, to the point where they gain that relentless endurance where they suddenly come up with 1 hit point once you knock them down.
No, now they believed that you were not going to be able to knock them down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like the world and them believed that so thoroughly that it became a thing.
Yeah, I love that. So I think the halflings attributed it to their own abilities and their own lucky nature, and it kind of gave them this lucky attribute. However, I think a subset of these halflings, maybe a family, maybe a well-known family, or a prestigious group, started having problems that occurred within their little farmstead, right? Maybe blight and plague started to occur. Maybe, their animals started to die. And, maybe, XYZ started to happen where their farmstead, their little civilization started to crumble. And they started to believe in a god of plague, death, and disease. Okay. This is what's they found us. We're no longer lucky. They have started plaguing and destroying our farmstead. Well, because they started to believe this, it manifested the very first god in halfling society, which is death, disease, and rot, right? And because their whole society was based off of agriculture and farming and ranching, this deity of disease and plague grew exponentially. His power began to take control of these fertile plains and essentially ravage these domains, which maybe even nowadays it's a barren wasteland, right? Where there was such a bad plague and such a bad, drought, all of this stuff, that it destroyed the civilization of the halflings. So they started to move. And everywhere the halflings moved, this deity followed them and chased them down and killed their livestock and, plagued their people and their crops. And so eventually, what ends up happening is I'm thinking they either find like a place of respite that does not get affected by this plague, or they, kind of what you were saying, they decide that the only way to escape it is to keep moving. And if they keep moving, the god of safe travels will bless them and continue to have their people flourish while on the move.
So the change that I would make to this is that I think they move because of the pestilence and such that is in their area. And when they move, some sort of cataclysm, whether it's like an earthquake, a volcanic eruption, something happens in where they were. And so because they got out safely, they start to think, oh, is the god of pestilence and whatnot, did he save us? And so that god also becomes somehow the god of pestilence, the god of disease, the god of safe travel as well.
Oh, it's like a one in all because they start believing that
they start believing that it was because of him they were safe. And so then he kind of gains, because this is early on still, he gains the domain of safe travel as well.
Now, it could be interesting if we wanted to have the god of safe travel be for some other group, and the halflings just believe that their luck as they move keeps them safe. You could do something like that too. And so they're just lucky to now be avoiding all of these plagues and disasters. You could do something like that too, which could be funny. It could be kind of funny.
I mean, they could also believe that because of their luck, the god of disease and pestilence and whatnot has taken a liking to them. So everybody else in the world just thinks it's this horrible god of pestilence and terribleness. And the halflings worship him also as the god of safe travel.
Of safe travel.
And they
think, I like that.
Yeah, they think they have won him over.
Because they've been so lucky, they've won him over, and now he blesses their travels.
Yes. And maybe he also blesses their crops now. Like, that's what they think.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I think that's pretty funny. I actually like that a lot. And so they've been running from this god this whole time while also believing he's blessing them.
Yeah, he's the reason why he is hurting where they're at. It means it's time to go.
Right.
That's why they're still nomads in a time where most people are settling down, is because every time they stop somewhere, this thing catches up to them, and then they're like, oh, that means we need to leave. Something bad's about to happen. Let's get out.
Yeah, so then obviously these halflings, they probably like raise livestock, right? Instead of like farm, because they couldn't really have a farm. I mean, they would be having like pack trains of animals, I'm assuming. Unless they had like some sort of like roving like giant beast that had farm plots on top of it or something, which could be interesting.
Or they just have carts, and in the back of the carts is just full of soil has
They have like little farm carts that are actually growing plants.
Yeah.
And maybe they have like a
I don't know how well that would work, like legitimately.
Well, I would assume like they would have like druids, like maybe it's all part of like the gypsy aesthetic, where they have like druids who help grow the carts.
Yeah.
Which could be really interesting and really, really fun.
It could be.
But anyways, so do you think if this god is kind of like this all-encompassing god of plague, death, disease, travel, safety, just to the halflings, do you think he's one of the only gods who's the same still? Like he never changed and he still follows the halflings to this day?
Oh, I definitely think he still follows the halflings. Do you think he hates or likes them? That's my question. Because I'm unsure. I think it'd be really interesting if he's following them because he hates them because they now made him this. But I also think it'd be really funny if he's following them and over time he's just grown. He's like, nah, I like him now.
Boy, I mean, I kind of think that he likes them now, you know? like I think he's grown fond of them, and I think it's hilarious. I just think it's so funny.
I think it's hilarious as well.
Do you think are there any gods, other gods that form under these groups, like under the nomads, or is it just him, or is there, or maybe they like
I think they
have like
started to
nomadic
develop other
spirits that they
ones,
created?
and then they kind of stopped because this one became all encompassing of everything they needed.
What if we kind of take the book from uh Chult, from what we just talked about, and what if they believed that this god was, oh, this is good. No, this is good. What if they believed that this god, instead of one entity, was a bunch of different spirits, and depending on their luck depends on which spirit they receive. Okay? So if they stay too long in one place, eventually they'll get the death and plague spirit. But if they keep moving, maybe they'll get the safety spirit or the prosperity spirit. And so this god is like one entity, but it's
Multiple
numerous different
personalities.
spirits that follow them and chase them around.
Interesting.
Because then it would really play into the luck factor of when their society is flourishing, it's because they're lucky and they got the lucky, the one spirit that's good to them, right? And if they keep moving, maybe perhaps it helps increase their odds of getting the better spirit. And if they stay stagnant, then the bad spirits come. So they kind of like have figured it out a little bit. I think that could be really fun. And instead of one deity, it's like a bunch of little spirits that maybe follow them around. And maybe they would, like, on their carts, they would create little spirits and little like maybe little magical fey spirits that kind of float around their carts, and like this whole like aesthetic of colorful lights and colorful different spirits that follow and float around the carts. And I think that could be super interesting and fun. And I think, though, that, like you were saying, I think the god like originates as plague, death, and disease, and then over time, as the halflings begin to believe that maybe they've seen success upon moving, it starts changing and breaking into different parts of the deity.
Yeah. So
how long do you think the halflings have worshipped this deity? Like, since, and where did they?
Well, I don't think he was a worshipable, like a good deity until like near the end of the ability to create deities time. I think it wasn't until soon.
Or maybe he's still like not, and that's why he's still able to like follow the halflings around, is because he never became like a god and was like maybe he's still
he's like a demigod.
The halfling luck too. Like, yeah, maybe he's like a separate entity. Like I was gonna say, maybe we play off the luck thing where they're both lucky and unlucky, where they didn't create a full-blown god who resides with the other gods. Or they didn't create a full-blown god who could like wipe them out with plague and famine. But instead, they created like a lesser entity, a lesser deity that protects them and watches over them while also curses them and does all that at the same time with these different spirits. And even through all these different cataclysms that have happened, this deity has just protected and followed the halflings while also it's his responsibility to watch over the halflings both in the good and the bad. Like, he's responsible for all of it that happens. In at least in their belief, which could be fun as well.
I think that's interesting that he to create him as he never got full godhood. Why do we think that is?
I'm not sure. Or maybe he also adopted part of halfling luck and never was affected by the things that happened in godhood, and he still resides around the earth today. Like,
well, I don't think they ever got locked off. Traits.
No, they haven't. No, but it would seem that he is more active than the rest currently, at least to this society.
Uh-huh.
How do you think like a deity like this would impact their culture? Like, do you think? I mean, obviously, it's not
I think it
a.
would become heavily religious if they felt like they were either under attack or under protection as much as this is. I think they would start to treat it with more reverence of, okay, this thing clearly is obsessed with us. Like, we got to make sure to do things with it, whether it's
Do you think they
new
would have
religious beliefs or things.
like? Do you think it would like correlate? They would have like lucky charms, like they're magically delicious. But do you think they
Yeah, I
would
was gonna
have
say they
like
better be
like
magically delicious.
like what if they also like during this creation time created charms that were actually lucky, and so like they thought like a rabbit's foot gave them the luck to escape this creature, and it became like a religious symbol to them, and it actually secretly holds power and luck to the halfling race because when they first stumbled upon it, they believed it was lucky. And maybe you could create like some luck based items or something that could be very interesting, or maybe they have like a bunch of chimes and different symbolisms that represent their luck and their fortune, that they have found throughout their travels, because every time they
Yeah.
travel, maybe like, oh, this bark growing on the right side of a tree indicates that that's the way we need to go because that's where the luck is pointing, right? And so they have like different symbols of bark on the right side of a tree, right? So that could be
Mm.
very interesting too. I think that would be a huge thing. They'd all turn like these like lucky religious items and symbols. And maybe each like roving cart group has like a lucky items cart where like you could see all the things that they at least would assume have brought them luck. Like maybe some
So
lucky guitar.
I kind of
or-
want to try this first. I want it to be,
Yeah.
what if they believed these items were lucky first? Then lucky things kept happening to them, so then they started to believe it was them. So originally it was just these items that they made lucky, and then it spread to the race.
Well, now it's even making me want to do like maybe not, but I was gonna say now maybe it's wanting me to be like these items are their own little lucky gods, and so all of them are tiny little lucky spirits that they've created instead of gods. Like they're just tons of luck spirits that follow the halflings around, which is why they're lucky.
I mean, I wouldn't hate the idea of halflings being followed around by gods that, I don't know if I'd make it lucky, but they were just, like, I think of them like trickster gods, like Chult has.
Yeah, well, I still like the idea of like one god, but I think like each time they found like a item or trinket that they believed was lucky, it like fragmented their god into more and more little lucky spirits that became weaker and weaker, but as the whole are still strong. So I mean that could be really fun too.
Yeah.
It would be totally wild. And I think do you think society would like cast them out? They probably wouldn't like them very much, right?
What do you mean?
I don't know, like they'd probably be kind of just like
I mean, they'd
different than the
definitely
rest
be.
of the world.
I think they would be. I think the only problems they would have, and I think this would be interesting for them to have this kind of aesthetic, especially if they're, as we know, mechanically lucky. I think they're shunned as plague bearers. Wherever they go, the crops die and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. And I mean,
So the
I
world
know
has a
in-
negative opinion on them.
Yeah, I mean, I know like if we're basing it loosely off of like real history, like nomads and gypsies were often thought of to bring plagues and disease and famine to their communities and curses to their communities. And I would definitely see still that if we had a group of halflings like this that like worshiped little trinkets that they thought were spirits and gods that actually are spirits and gods because they created them, I think they would definitely be like thought of as a curse if they settled down in your society.
Yeah.
And maybe like when we, get farther and farther down the road where now it's like nations and stuff and it's no longer necessarily, based on races, maybe even still there's a little bit of stigma. Like if a halfling
There's
owns, like, a
100% still
tavern-
Sigma.
Yeah, like if a halfling owns a tavern, it's still kind of like a, don't necessarily drink there, or you'll get the you'll get the you'll get the
You'll get the
plague or whatever
curse.
from drinking their wine, or sleeping there, you'll have endlessly bad dreams, curses and nightmares. Even though that's not necessarily the case anymore, but I think still there would be that little like, you know, you know, uh, stereotype that follows them around, which I think could be fun to play on. And
Yeah,
again,
I
it
think
wouldn't
it
be
would
in
be.
every society,
Especially
but
especially if their whole thing is lucky, and that's the aesthetic and belief that people have of them.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, like in especially in US history, people were really, really harsh to gypsies. So like
I mean, if we want to go U.S. history was harsh on
everybody.
yeah,
A lot of groups. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I think
like even my family's had a lot of discrimination historically with my Irish ancestors and such when they came over.
Big time.
There was big, like, U.S. sucks when it comes to that stuff. You're like, why?
Yeah.
Why did you hate everybody but you, even though, like, you were everybody at one point?
Yep. No, the U.S. has a very, very harsh relationship with racism and things like that. Really, that still impact people today.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And I think you would, in our fantasy world, I think you would definitely see that with, because of our very racial start, you would definitely still see that kind of thing unfold, that would unfold here and there. And then, like we always talk about with these kind of subjects, it's really fun in D&D, at least in my opinion, to explore them and solve them. That's what we always say. And, because in the real world, sometimes it feels like you can't. But in D&D world, you can stop these kind of things and have them, that's my opinion, what makes it beautiful, like we always talk about.
Yeah, I like that too. Feels like you actually have a power in the world.
Yeah.
Do something about this stuff that you can't in the real world.
Yeah. Well, anything else we want to add to the little halflings and their god? Their weird, strange deity that we've come up with?
Well, I think details. We need details.
What do you mean?
Details. I mean, we have no details about who this god is, what they are, what they act like, any details on this thing.
Okay, so I think the best way for us to do this would kind of be walking through the history of this deity. And so our first kind of like major detail is obviously like a god of plague and famine that followed the halflings and made them move from place to place, right? So
I don't think it originally, I don't think when it was the god of famine originally, it was had any distinct connection to one group or another.
I only think it
that grew
does
later in
because
life.
I only think it does because the halflings were the one who created it. So it's not necessarily
okay.
Like I don't think its original like intent was to follow halflings around. But I think the belief that, we're nomad and everywhere we go this thing keeps following us, it turned into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, we have thousands of years of creation period. First 1,000 years the halflings are like, okay, we created this plague god because it keeps plaguing us. And then next 1,000 years, like, well, it keeps following us. So obviously it's the god of plagues that, clearly only affects us, right?
Yeah.
And so it starts to like mold into that. And I think then they start believing in their own luck and lucky items that they find, that this must be a symbol from the god of, this god to point us where we need to be going. So maybe instead of this god is just a god of plagues and disease, it's actually like pointing us into our next prosperous location.
Yes.
Right?
I definitely see that.
They find these little trinkets, rabbit's foot, lucky 4-leaf clover, like all sorts of random things, like a lucky shirt, like just all sorts of random little lucky things that all become their own little spirits in ways that like point to where the next prosperous location is. And so every place they go, they believe that this god of disease, plague, and famine is pointing them safely to the next place of prosperity before it comes to them, right? I think that's kind of what I'm thinking, to put it in a more clear, precise thought pattern.
Yes.
And I love the idea of they know this deity is plaguing them and following them, but they also know this deity is leading them into places of prosperity. So they're running from the deity who's showing them where to go. All based off of little lucky trinkets they find along the way that point them in the direction they're supposed to go.
Yes.
And each time they find one of these, it like turns it into a smaller and smaller fragment of spirits and things like that they believe follow them and lead them and guide them, which I think is super fun.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and then I think well, what I was saying too is that I think the halfling culture, like we were discussing, would be very, very religious and follow a very, very gypsy-like aesthetic with like big wagons and carts that have little chimes and interesting little colorful flags and pieces of cloth and, you know, plants and animals and all sorts of weird little, you know, colorful things everywhere that kind of all represent the lucky things they found along the way that have pointed them to the next area of prosperity.
Are halflings covered in tattoos of all the kind of lucky things that have happened in their life?
Oh yeah, you think? I mean, I think so, right?
Like it's a large tapestry of
yeah,
all the trinkets that they have personally encountered.
Yeah,
and so like halflings love to share their tapestries because it's their story of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're also a big storytelling society too, where like they gather around their campfires and they tell stories of the lucky times they've had and the, you know, the not so lucky times they've had, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for episode 83 of Dungeoneered.
Heck yeah.
If you'd like to write to us, you can write to us at dungeoneered@hotmail.com. We love to hear from you if you have like ideas for topics or lukewarm opens, or just want to tell us like how you enjoyed one of our episodes, or a cool creation that you have, or a cool creation that we made on the show that you liked and you used, or like, we'd love to hear it all. If you listen to us on any podcasting apps that have ratings and reviews, it really helps the show by showing you're engaging in more ways than just one. That kind of fell apart. I didn't say that correctly.
Take two.
But I think you understand. No, I think they understand what I was going for. If you write a review, not just if you listen to us on a podcasting app that has ratings and reviews, that doesn't do it. You have to write a review. Or just give us a star rating. I'm tired.
Luck is not with you on this outro. I'm
no, it's not. I have pestilence and disease and plague right now.
Oh no.
Where's my lucky trinket? Do you have anything else to add, Aaron?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, as I always say, always remember to be the sharpest barrel in the bunch.
No, I can't. I can't do it.
See you next time.
This time. Bye.
Bye.